name is Danielle. Pretty sure you already know that. I say it all the time, but whatever, it's my channel. I can do what I want. Anyways, alright, so today, I'm actually really excited about this video, and it's been something that's been on my heart for a little bit to share. Today I'm going to be sharing my testimony and why I believe in Jesus, and why I actually go to church and stuff, and why I am who I am, and why I am a Christian, and all this wonderful stuff. So I'm actually going to share that today, so I hope you enjoy the video. So, now, why do I believe in Jesus? Good question. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to be able to notice that I look different. So I have dwarfism. I look very different on the outside, and that can kind of be a little hard sometimes to deal with, to handle, but that is my life, and that's just something that I gotta deal with. So from as early as I can remember, my parents brought my brother and I up in church, so we'd go to church every Sundays, and every day I was reminded that God created me on purpose and that He made me this way for a reason. So two things. I was told He never made mistakes, and He made me little for a reason. It was honestly so simple, yet unknowingly at the time it was so profound for my parents to constantly be reminding me that I was made for a purpose and that God made me this way for a reason. So like I said, I grew up going to church. I wouldn't say I was really following God though. I was terrible at reading my Bible. Although like the one thing that I can genuinely say that I knew was because of my parents, and I was made this way for a reason, and that I was not an accident. So I would say that I really started to believe what I believed in and what I believe in now when I was 17. I was really starting to think more on if this was something that I wanted to give my life over to, that if this God was someone who I wanted to put my trust in, and this God who apparently knows the number of hairs on my head and who knows what I'm going to be doing tomorrow, wanted a personal relationship with me, and that He wanted me to follow Him for myself and not just because that's what I was told to do, but that it was my decision. And instead of just going through the motions of having one foot in on Sundays and having the other foot out every other 6 days of the week, because that was basically me at the time. So most of you know I'm a swimmer. That's my job. Swim for Canada, get to compete all across the world. It's super fun. I love it. And I started swimming when I was 11, so right at the end of 2008. And I would say, honestly, for the first about 6 years of my swimming career, I did not know what a setback was, and it was pretty smooth sailing. It was I was always going best times. I was starting to break Canadian records. I made my first international team at 14. I won my first international medal at 14, and I hadn't really yet experienced really what a setback was, because it was just easy, and I was just swimming really well. But in 2014, God really took me on basically this 5-year journey of uncontrollable setbacks, and really had me dig deep into figuring out if I really wanted to follow Him. So in 2014, I had double leg straightening surgery. I had both my legs broken. I was in a cast for 4 months, for 4 months, and I was in a wheelchair for like 3-4 months, and the recovery took a really long time. My bones took forever to heal, but basically I'm not going to get into the super details of this, but it prevented me from making my first national team since I started swimming. And that was really, really hard for me, because what happens when hard work doesn't get you the results that you want? Like, what happens when your hard work just isn't good enough? Something to think about. So basically the following year I decided to drop everything and just focus on swimming and focus on making the Rio Paralympic team. That was probably mentally the hardest year of my life at the time. I was so consumed by achieving this goal that I literally put my entire identity, like I put everything that I was into swimming and into the sport. And the problem with that is that when we put our identity in something that has the ability to change, we don't do well and we become unstable. And like we can shift around because what we have attempted to root ourselves in has the capability of moving. So if this thing that we're trying to base our entire life on moves, the rug is going to get swept from under our feet and we're going to fall and we're going to move with it. It's kind of funny now that I think about it. Well, ish. I don't know if it's actually funny, but I put my identity and my whole life in the water. And the thing about water is that it moves. There's waves, there's currents, there's deep waters, uncharted waters that we just don't know what's going to happen. And it's funny that I thought it would be okay to put my identity in that, because what happens when a wave comes and crashes over you is you don't have control over when the waves are going to swell up and when the currents are going to take you out. And I put my identity in that. And now I think that's kind of funny, but at the time it wasn't a smart move. So at this point, I was really questioning God, and I was really questioning why I was swimming and if this was really what I had been called to do, and I was just feeling really lost. And so I went to the trials and I swam so slow and I didn't make the team. And this was one of the most devastating things that I had ever had happen to me at the time. I put my life into training for Rio and it didn't happen. And so does that mean that my life isn't good enough? That what I was able to produce wasn't good enough? That my purpose is not good enough? Like, I couldn't achieve what I told everybody that I could. So does that mean that I was done? Did that mean that God was done with me? I didn't know. I remember that year I had already planned to come to Montreal to train where I was training, and I'd applied to some universities and I was just waiting to hear back to see if I had gotten in. And the funny thing about God and his sense of humor and just God in general is that he rarely actually does things in your timing and in how you want them to. He always does them in his. And so I remember coming back on the plane, I was gutted, I was devastated, I was disappointed, I was angry, I was frustrated. You know, all the adjectives, like all the bad adjectives that you can think of, that's what I was feeling. And I remember lying in my bed that night and I was checking my email, and there on my email was my acceptance letter into university. And so a door had closed, but another one had opened. And that letter and that moment was all that I needed to know that I was still meant to be swimming, because a door closed on Rio, a dream that I had had since I had started swimming. But then another door opened for me to come to Montreal and continue swimming. That was the only hope that I needed to keep going. Literally, like, immediately what my parents had been drilling into me since I was a little girl just came back. And it was, Danielle, God has a purpose for your life and he made you this way for a reason. And honestly, like, I wasn't sure of that reason, and TBH, I'm still not sure of that reason. But in the middle of that pain, it was so comforting to know that there was a God who still had a purpose for my life, that even though I felt like I had failed, that I felt like I didn't measure up, that I felt like I was just incapable of things, that there was a God that still has purpose for my life, and that he had made me a dwarf for a reason. And it was even more comforting that the purpose for my life goes far beyond just myself, and it goes towards something greater, and that even though I felt like I had failed, even there's purpose in failure, and there's purpose in what we go through, and that my life was not over, and that it still had something worth swimming for. And so, and more so actually, like, it became apparent that there is something that I still have to do in swimming, that there was still a purpose for me swimming, and that God obviously was in control, because I was not in control. I had no idea what was happening. That was not my plan to miss the Rio Paralympic team. And like, as much as I want to say that I can control everything in my life, like, I can't. And so it came to a point back then that I needed to put my faith in someone that I trusted that did have everything in control, because I had to give up control, and knowing myself, that was a really hard thing to do. So then basically, I accepted my place at university, and I began reading my Bible, and I began learning more about this relational God who actually wanted a relationship with me, and who didn't just want me to come to him when I needed help, and who didn't just want me to come to church on Sundays and say that I was a Christian but not really understand all the abundant life that he had planned for me. And so I just really poured myself into learning more about him. And then 3 months after Paralympic trials, I got baptized. And when I got baptized, the only thing that I knew was that I wanted to make my faith my own, and I wanted to pursue a relationship with God for myself. And that was all I knew. And I knew that I was going to learn more about God in the future, but I wanted to make that declaration that, hey, like, the plans sometimes that we have for our lives fall through, but that's okay, because there's ultimately a greater plan for our lives. And I wanted to declare that I trusted that. Already has the plans laid out for me, and the best plans for my life. And I say best plans, and there's a lot of things in life that don't go well, and there's a lot of things in my life that I'm walking through right now that aren't going anything but well. But sometimes these plans might not look like how we want them to look. Basically, I put my whole identity into swimming, and that year God was digging me out of this self-identity pit, and he was putting me on firm ground to stand. And so to wrap this up, and to go back to the title of this video, is why I believe in Jesus, is that I believe in Jesus because even when the plans and hopes and dreams don't work out how I want them to, or how the people around me want them to work out, I trust that he has greater plans for me, and that I wasn't made this way by accident. So that is why I believe in Jesus, and that's my testimony. That's how I really came into faith, and how I was raised going to church, but that was how I really came to make my faith my own and decide that I wanted to follow God. You know, like, everybody's faith journey is different. Everybody believes in their own things and what they believe in, but it is so comforting to know that even when my life isn't going well, and there's so many things that aren't going well, that God knows that on the other side of this will be good. And that is something that I am constantly learning and constantly diving into. But even when I don't exceed in the pool, I know that I can believe in a God that has greater things for me, and that there is good things even when it doesn't feel good. So that is why I believe in Jesus. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, you know, do all the normal things that people who watch YouTube videos do, I guess. And I'm just praying that you guys have a great week. I'm praying that these words resonate with you in some way, and I'd love to hear your testimonies. So again, drop a comment below, and I'd love just to keep shining lights together. And yeah, love you guys, and I'll see you next time. All right.